Okay, so today we're talking about factoring, and we're talking about both real and imaginary roots. I like this rock picture because it was sort of real and imaginary at the same time. Because have you guys ever heard of people seeing like strange things like the Virgin Mary in a bologna sandwich? Okay. There can be a puddle, it can be like a hillside, all of a sudden when the light hits it just right. Look at this rock more closely. Thank you. Do you see the guy who's sitting down, his hair is like right in this area? Like there's the hair, and looks like he's got his legs crossed, and he's sitting like cross-legged with, he's got this like tunic on or something. Where do you see the bird? Go ahead and draw him up. Draw the bird up there so I can see sort of where it is. Oh, okay, I gotcha. You see a different person? Yep, I know what you mean. It's like there's a little baby like right in there, and then this is the person's. You guys ever do the things where you have to like let your eyes go all loose and then you can see stuff in the pictures, like the whales or whatever?
You can never see where it's turning people, and if you look at their head, it turns, but if you look at their feet, it goes like this. Oh, yeah.
I haven't seen it yet. You have to show me that later. Make it go away. Is it distracting you? Okay. Of course, imaginary things are like leprechauns or like square root of -1. They're imaginary. So keeping it real, we are going to be looking at ones that touch at the x-axis. Okay. Like, for instance, these guys touch at the x-axis. And the kind that don't touch are more imaginary. Like if you have a graph that doesn't touch, that gives you imaginary roots. The only way to be able to see them is by, for instance, doing a quadratic formula where you'll have a negative underneath the square root. Exactly. That's a picture of the Loch Ness Monster. It's in Loch Ness, which is a town or a lake, a loch to be exact, in Scotland. And there's been all kinds of sightings of this strange thing that's in the lake, and some people think that it is a prehistoric beast. There have been literally millions of dollars spent to try to find this thing and take like sonar pictures of it or something, to no avail. So it could just be a legend created by the people of Loch Ness. I wanted to mention, well, what is that? That's a good question. Yes, sir. Drain the lake. It's a really big lake. And why do you put the water back? I mean, you have to have a really big bowl to keep it in while you're just drain the lake. All the people that live on the lake can be like, oh, I don't have any water anymore, but at least we know there's no monster. I had an old science teacher when I was in when I was teaching in Apple Valley, just for a very short period of time. Did my student teaching there. There's a couple old teachers there that had something kind of fun like the Loch Ness. Shh. They were trying to create a legend. So what they did is they took a deer and they went to a taxidermist. A taxidermist is a guy who like stuffs animals. They took this deer and they had the deer stuffed in a standing position, standing on its hind legs. First of all, like standing straight up like a human stands up. And it had its front legs out like this, sort of like, you know, pointing at you. And then they had the deer, they put in eyes that would reflect, you know, like reflective eyes, so that when a car was, for instance, driving past, it would reflect, and they would see like the red in the eyes. And then the thing that made the thing really creepy was they put in a set of teeth on it that were actually pig teeth, and they're big, kind of like big fangy, sort of pointy teeth, which deer don't have teeth like that. And this thing looked just hideous, like scary, scary hideous. And it's standing up on its hind legs, kind of looking at you, and the eyes will be glowing if it's in the dark. So then they brought it into Wisconsin, in a small town area, and they started hiding in the woods and putting the deer out on the edge of the road as a car was coming past. So there's this deer standing on its hind legs with its fangs out and the red eyes, on, like standing there looking at them, and people would get this glimpse of it and drive past it, and it's talking about all these amazing things that happen. People would usually like slam on their brakes, like turn around and be looking like, oh my God, what was that? And then they'll like back up, and they would take it down. So that when they backed up, there was nothing there. And they were like, did you see that thing? Oh my gosh, it was the scariest thing. And then they'd do it to the next car driving past and the next car driving past. And they did it right near this bar. So a lot of the people that were driving to the bar were the people that were seeing this deer. And they did it for several different nights to different cars. And then they'd go into the bar and talk about it and like strike up a conversation like, did you see this weird looking deer? And they'd be like, yeah, I saw that thing too. That was so scary. And they were trying to create like the legend of the Loch Ness Monster, except it was like the legend of the deranged deer or whatever. And so anyway, they even had somebody fire shots. Like there must have been a real redneck, had their rifle in their truck. They hit the brakes, jumped out of the car, and shot into the woods. Like bam, 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 trying to hit this thing. And so they could have got killed doing this. But anyway, yeah, that's what you do in Wisconsin when you have too much spare time. Anyway, it's a great legend that I wanted to tell you about. All right. So let's walk through factoring from easy to difficult. This is something you can do on your iPad screen. Would you please write fairly large? That's something you got to get used to. This is not your handwriting. It has to like fill up one line on a page. If this takes up a whole page, that's okay. Write big. 6 goes into both of them. X plus what? Did I redo that right? Oh, that's why it's so quiet. What should I have? 6 times what? 4x plus 3. There you go. All right, good. Remember, you're on your iPad, you're able to have a whole new screen for each problem, just like me. Did you ever think about that? I don't have like 10 problems on a page. I just flip to the next page and I got a different problem on it. All right, try that one. This one's a little different, because why? You don't just take like 6 out, you take out 2x, exactly. Noticing that you can take a variable out of both of them, and then you'd have x plus 2. Now how do I know if I'm right? I don't. It is possible that one of the other teachers put it up on Schoology. I made it last night, but I don't know if anybody put it up on Schoology as a... It is there? Oh. Okay, let's take a second to pull up this on Schoology. Everybody, all these slides are apparently on Schoology, and they're on one per page, kind of like I was saying would be a good idea. So, everybody find Schoology, find today's date, which is, by the way, the 13th, Friday the 13th. It is. I think it's one of the reasons that this 13 on my shirt, I guess maybe I shouldn't say his name, whatever. Jack's day, his number was 13, right? Anyway, so that's probably why this is the big day. Aren't they selling stuff to like help raise money for him at one of the games tonight and stuff? Anyway, last night, okay. I'm going to pause for a second while you find this file on Schoology, pull it up, and then you won't have to write all the original problems down. You'll be able to just do the problem underneath the original problem. Okay, so here we go. This one, you don't even need to do it. You can just tell me. X plus 4, x minus 4. Good. That's a perfect square one. What if it had had a 4 in front of it? Is it still a perfect square? Yup, you can still do it. And now it would be 2x plus 4 and then 2x minus 4. Good. All right, what if this became a plus? Can you still do it? Nope. Only with imaginaries. All right, moving on. This kind you can factor really easy. Again, I hope in your head you can just go, oh, that's just x and plus and plus. And the only way to make a 3 is a 3 and a 1. And you think you got the right answer, but that won't work at all, will it? You can't factor that one. So what does that mean? Does that mean this one has no answers? Now, if we use plus box, minus box, we will get vertex form for it, but that's not what I asked for. I want the answers. Quadratic formula, yes. Would you please take a moment and do the quadratic formula on this one right now? It is so critical. I'm telling you, we use quadratic formula still like 5 times a month in pre-calc. So it's used a ton. Negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac, that whole thing, you know? In case you forgot it, you do need to memorize it. X equals negative b. Actually, we should say opposite b. Plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac. All over 2a. All right, and I leave those a and c as parentheses, and then I drop them in because it's too hard to try to do in your head, and all the mistakes people make are underneath here. So I try to be more careful by like writing this part out. So this is a, and this is c, and then I'm going to multiply it out, and I end up with 4 minus 12. Wait a minute. That's a negative under the square root, isn't it? So some of you might think, so I just say impossible. Not true. Your test will include problems like this, and you have to be able to simplify them all the way. So go ahead, and the main part of the simplifying is to simplify that square root of negative 8. And I hope you know how to do it already without me helping. So try it. Simplify it down. Yes. Oh, to this? Since it's in, yeah, since it's in, what's it called? No, not notarize. Paperport notes. You can go up to menu, and then isn't there? Do you import a page, or what do you do?
If you just scroll, if you're in it, you just scroll down a lot. Press insert.
Let's try that. Okay, where's insert?
You click on it and then you go insert.
Okay, there we go. So you click on the thing that says menu, and then under, you go edit?
So then you go to notes and click on the notes set, and then on the bottom left corner is a blue insert button.
Soon I will have something that will be able to project my iPad onto the screen. They just aren't done connecting all the rooms yet. Some of the teachers that had the iPads already, they've already got them. So I could show you on the iPad exactly what to touch. We're going to get there, but it's not there yet. Okay, so again, you touch on the name of the file you actually imported, which was notes, and then once you're in there, you can hit insert a page. You can actually insert a blank page. You can insert a lined page. You can insert a graph paper page. It's pretty powerful because you can bring in graph paper if you need it. All right, so anyway, back to this. Hopefully you know enough to square root 8 could be broken up into square root 4, square root 2, and square root of negative 1. That's the ultimate way to do it. Because now I've got all my little parts. The square root of negative 1 is the I part. This is I. This one's 2. And so now it's negative 2 plus or minus 2I root 2 all over 2. There's 2's running around everywhere. Can I cancel off that 2? Yes, I can simplify it down by getting rid of the 2. So then, 2 goes into 2 once, 2 goes into 2 once, 2 goes into 2 once. That's really what you should do, because otherwise people will think it just disappears. Negative 1 plus or minus I root 2. And it's not over 1, because over 1 makes it just more complicated, and why do that? Dividing by 1 doesn't do anything anyways. There is the right answer. Is that one answer or two? That's two answers because one's with plus, one's with minus. And you need to understand that because imaginaries always come in packages of two. There's never just one imaginary root. If there's any imaginary roots, there's always at least two. There's 2 or 4 or 6. They come in packages of 2. All right, moving on. There's this one, but I'm not going to make you factor it because I know you could. What would be the mistake a lot of kids would make that would make it way harder? They forget to take out the 6. Yep. If you take the 6 out, it's way easier. All right. Next thing. This kind, it's got 4 parts. This kind I want you to do. Find this page. And just because the writing on your page is small, you can write big underneath it. That's another common mistake is people think they have to match the size of the writing that's on the page. No, you don't. You can write 4 times bigger than that. It's okay. You're going to have a whole new page for each problem anyway. So write big. It'll be easier for me to read and for you to read too. That's how you start. This has always bothered me a little bit when I take the 4 out. It's like there's this gap in here. You should just put a plus in there, but I suppose I could say I'm taking out positive 4 and put it that way. But all right, this and this need to come to the front now. And after these two come to the front, so to speak, what I'm really doing here is dividing by x plus 3. Dividing by x plus 3. That cancels, that cancels, that cancels, that cancels. And what's left is x squared plus 4. Raise your hand if you had the same thing as I did. Awesome. Okay, do you get that this would have a real root, which would be negative 3? What kind are the other ones going to be? Imaginary. And if I was going to get the answer for this, I have to figure out how to make this whole thing 0. That's the point of what a root does. A root's the same as a 0, right? And a 0 makes the answer 0. So I'd say x squared plus 4 equals 0. X squared equals negative 4. Do you know what to do now? Most people know what to do now. Square root. Remember that? That's the problem. It's not x. Absolute value of x. And the square of negative 4 would be 2i. Most people, if they think about that for a minute, will get that. The thing you forget is that absolute value, and people forget it in pre-calc all the time. Yes, that means the final answer is plus and minus 2i. Remember, imaginaries come in sets of 2. If you don't have a plus and a minus on your answer, it is not right. Know what I mean? It's got to have plus and minus on there to be an imaginary answer. All right. How about these giant ones? Do you remember how we did these? That wasn't divide and conquer. It has to be even number of terms to divide and conquer. Synthetic. Synthetic. Now, how do you pick what number to choose in here? F-con over F-co. All right. Now, this one will work. There is something that works in this. Do you know it? You're probably right. Now, let's double check this. Now, are you just psychic, or what are you doing to figure out what number this is? He's not cheating. So you're thinking the difference between 7 and 4 is 3, and 16 and 12. Well, 16 is not divisible by 3. Well, I can tell you that you gave me 2 numbers out of, there are a lot of possible roots here. And you got one of them right, so you're pretty good at this. So, how about this? What whole class of numbers can I throw out that couldn't possibly be right? Positives. Because if you try a positive number here, we're going to end up dropping this one, multiply, add, multiply, add, multiply, add. The last number would be huge. So it can't be positive. So yeah, it has to be negative. Try negative 1. I think it works. Do it.
Could you just do synthetic?
Yes. All right, so once we do synthetic here, we drop the first one. Snoop Dogg picture earlier, remind you, drop it like it's hot. Then multiply. Then add. Then multiply. Then add. Then multiply. Then add. Then multiply. And then add. And it comes out to a 0. And why did I put that bar in there? Because the 0 is not really part of your answer. It just tells you that it worked. And now this is the most important part. This tells me the answer. X plus 1 is a factor, and all of this is a factor. And do you remember what the 12 is? That's the constant. Good. And then how about this 4? That's how many x's. This is how many x squareds. This is how many x cubes. And what did we just do? No, that was not divide and conquer. That was synthetic. And we did synthetic to factor this giant nasty thing. Up until this year, you'd never factored anything anywhere near that big before. We factored it. We made it into a multiply problem. This times this, and it would be the giant clam to figure out whether or not we really did it right. You'd have to multiply all those things together to see if it really worked. Yeah, that's a really big clam. Now, could I continue factoring? Absolutely. In fact, you have to get the right answer. So this part can divide and conquer, and if you think about it, have you seen that one before? It's the exact same as that one we just did a second ago. So it's just, wait a minute, what was it again? X plus 3 and x squared plus 4. I guess you'd probably just do it. X squared comes out, and then what's left? X plus 3, and then 4 comes out, x plus 3, and then the x plus 3 comes to the front, and here's what everybody does wrong. They think that's the answer. You got it. You got to remember to drop this one down, x plus 1. There we go. Oh, why can't you split x plus squared plus 4 into two things? Because you'd have to use imaginaries. If it was a minus, then you could. I bet what you're thinking is that it could be x plus 2 and x plus 2, but they can't. Because you'd have x squared and you'd have 4, but you'd also have a middle term of 4x. That's an easy mistake to make. All right, so we have factored the big mammoth into this. Have I factored it all the way? Yes, I have. The only question is if I could factor this, and yeah, the only way you could factor it is if you use imaginaries, and we do not require you to break that into imaginaries. All right, so for this one, let's say this is the answer. Would it have imaginary or real roots? Correct answer is both. All right, I'd like you to, in your head, or on paper, either way, I know the real root already, it's 7. Figure out the imaginary roots and write them big and in a dark pen, so that like a thicker pen than normal, so I can see it from the back of the room. And I'm going to ask you to tilt in a second, not yet. And you're going to show me what you think the answer was. And if you have to add in a page to make it big enough so that I can see it, your letters should be like 3 inches high. You're finding the imaginary roots right now. You're trying to figure out what makes this equal 0. So you solve it like a little equation, and you should end up, if there's not an I in your answer, then it wasn't imaginary. Let's see. All right, good. I'll just have you tilt as you're ready. Whenever you're ready, you got it. Good job. Good, good. Hard to read, though. Look at how thick she made her pen. It's easy for me to read. That's good. Thank you. Yup, 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 yup. I like that one, too. That's nice and big. Yup, 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 yup. Wait. Got to be plus and minus. All right. Don't want to drop the iPad. That'd be bad news. All right. This one. Are they real or imaginary? False. They're not both. Bottom line is, the first one's real, duh. This one seems like it's going to be imaginary, but it's not. Because it's going to be x squared minus 8 equals 0. X squared equals positive 8. You going to see any negative underneath the square root? No, you're not. Therefore, it's not imaginary. Half the class made this mistake on the, okay, a third of the class made this mistake on the test. I think people thought anytime it was looked like this, sort of, that it was going to be imaginary. Nope. It's only if you're solving it and you end up with a negative under the square root. That's when it's imaginary. So this one's just the square, plus and minus the square root of 8. Which is the same as plus and minus root 4 root 2, which is the same as plus and minus 2 root 2. That doesn't have any I in it. There's no negative under the root. It is not imaginary. Okay? So, moral of the story, just because there's a square root does not mean that the answer is imaginary. If it's a square root of a negative, that's what will mean that it's imaginary. Okay? All right, I think we covered everything that you need to know for today. Now we got to do some correcting of the packet.